Part 3. Hectic couple of days. Quick update. The lawyer has finally sorted out my financial matters and drafted an initial separation agreement and property settlement. Today, I met with my estranged spouse at a coffee shop to discuss these documents and our living arrangements. She was taken aback by the paperwork and became emotional. I clarified that I needed some financial stability to move forward. The mention of divorce hit her hard, and she expressed her reluctance, stating that she'd do anything to avoid it. It seemed like she hadn't seriously contemplated divorce as the ultimate solution. I suggested she take a copy of the documents and review them, and also consider getting legal advice. After she composed herself, she inquired about how she could assist me. I requested that we maintain minimal contact for now. I explained that I would begin individual counseling next week, and I might be more open to discussion after a few sessions. She seemed hurt when I refrained from hugging her or reciprocating with, "I love you." The meeting was brief, lasting only 30 minutes, yet it drained me completely. I feel utterly exhausted, as if I've been hit by a truck. It's imperative that I get some rest because my flight departs early tomorrow. I did bring up the idea of a post-nuptial agreement with my attorney. However, he ultimately advised against pursuing that path. It seems that many divorce lawyers in our state tend to avoid such agreements due to their historically mixed track record in court. I appreciate your concerns about my approach, but for my peace of mind, having a concrete and legally enforceable agreement is the only way I can comfortably address other issues in our relationship. My lawyer believes that the agreement should hold up in court, especially given her extensive history of infidelity. She is welcome to challenge or negotiate the terms. I agree that this process should remain strictly business, and speaking for myself, there won't be any hard feelings. I've been part of numerous business negotiations involving much larger assets, and I understand how they function. I doubt she would take this to court, as it could expose details of her infidelity to the public. I'll admit that I am better at separating my emotions from business transactions than she is, so only time will reveal how she responds. I need to catch another flight, so I'll provide another update later. On my way back home, my estranged spouse, referred to as wayward wife, sent an email expressing her desire to discuss our living arrangements further this weekend. We have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. I often wish I could look at her and see the woman I've been married to for 28 years, rather than the stranger in those pictures and emails. I've heard about couples experiencing hysterical bonding after the D-Day, but I find it hard to fathom. I don't want her to even touch me, let alone engage in intimacy. While I haven't placed much faith in counseling before, I genuinely hope that the individual counseling sessions I'm beginning next week will help me clarify my feelings about her. I'd like to express my gratitude once again for all the thoughts and support I've received. I'll post an update when I return home. Yesterday we had a late lunch and our conversation extended for approximately 2 hours. I'm quite certain the waiter had his fill of us by the time we left, but I made sure to leave him a generous tip, so Merry Christmas to him. She had a lawyer review the separation and asset division agreement. Apparently the lawyer wasn't thrilled with it, but acknowledged that considering the extensive history of infidelity, it was equitable. As a result, she went ahead and signed it. She remained visibly saddened by the formal nature of our separation, yet expressed her willingness to do whatever it takes to salvage our marriage. Her sister, who is more than willing to continue hosting her, may have been mentioned before. Her sister is a widow with grown children, so she likely appreciates the company, and they have a good rapport. She discussed her 2 individual counseling sessions from last week. Apparently, her counselor believes she has made significant progress in self-improvement since the affair. However, her counselor emphasized the importance of her gaining a better understanding of my pain. To achieve this, Her counselor has her engaging in mental and writing exercises, prompting her to imagine discovering what I went through. She conveyed that she deeply regrets the terrible decisions she made during the affair and acknowledges that I didn't deserve such a profound betrayal. Although I'm not obligated to grant her another chance, she hopes I might allow her to support my recovery, even if I choose not to continue our relationship. During this conversation, I mostly listened and asked a few questions, but my primary focus was on practical matters, like arrangements for Christmas, taking care of the animals when I'm out of town, and coordinating the retrieval of more of my belongings from the house. I must admit, she appears to be genuinely horrified by her actions and the impact they've had on our kids and me. She recounted her conversation with our eldest daughter, referred to as first daughter, over Thanksgiving, and it was nothing short of a disaster. My first daughter was furious and didn't hold back, describing her actions as disgraceful and expressing her deep sense of shame. My wayward wife's sister was there when my first daughter vented her feelings and had to step in to diffuse the situation. My wayward wife mentioned that she was unsure which was more challenging to endure, my first daughter's impassioned reprimand, or the fact that our younger daughter, referred to as second daughter, was refusing to communicate with her. I informed her that our daughters would be spending the Christmas break with me. I clarified that I wouldn't actively discourage or encourage them to visit wayward wife. She understood and agreed to deliver the girls' presents before their arrival. By my request, she and I won't be exchanging gifts this year. It marks the first Christmas in 33 years that we won't be spending together. The whole situation is undeniably disheartening. Christmas has always been my favorite time of the year and held special significance for our family. I can't help but wonder if I'll ever be able to regain the joy of the holiday season as I did before D-Day. Thank you for taking the time to listen, everyone. I'm scheduled for my first individual counseling appointment this Tuesday. I'm not entirely sure what to expect, but I'm feeling hopeful. I'd like to express my gratitude to everyone who recommended Squid's thread on the duality of the wife in the betrayed spouse's mind. It's been an insightful read, offering plenty of helpful advice and different perspectives. Hello, everyone. I was genuinely surprised to see the multitude of responses that appeared over the past 2 days. There were many valuable questions and an abundance of support, as always. It's late, as I've had a couple of hectic days at work, so I'll hold off until tomorrow to make a more substantial post and attempt to address some of the questions. Wishing you all a pleasant evening. Hello all. I apologize for my limited presence this week. Work tends to become quite hectic towards the end of the year, which has kept me at the office for extended hours. As I've mentioned before, I find solace in my work, especially in these trying times. I had my inaugural individual counseling session on Tuesday, and it was an unusual experience. During the first session, we delved into my narrative, outlined the areas where I believed I needed the most support at this moment, and charted a course of action. My counselor assisted me in compiling a set of questions, many of which have been raised by members in this discussion, to pose to my wayward wife. These questions are primarily aimed at helping me gauge her commitment to our relationship and family. My counselor emphasized the need for me to regain a sense of control, given my tendency toward being a bit of a control freak. Feeling like a leaf adrift generates an immense amount of stress in my life. Additionally, she recommended an exercise mentioned here involving a week spent thinking and behaving as if I were already divorced. This is my assignment, and I have another session scheduled with her for next week. Numerous individuals were discussing what the therapist of wayward wife had advised her years ago. My earlier statement may have caused some confusion. As I said, I guess that her counselor suggested that instead of telling me she works on our marriage and becomes the wife and mother she should have been during the years she stole from us. The words her therapist used were, bear the burden herself. I used, I guess, in a colloquial manner, but, in fact, her individual counselor did explicitly recommend that she refrain from telling me in order to spare me the pain. Well, I inquired whether she was seeing the same therapist. She is not. Her previous therapist relocated out of state. I'm uncertain, but I don't have concrete information about whether she confessed to our minister. The friends who were aware of the affair are no longer a part of our lives. Her sister was informed after the affair partner's passing while she was in therapy. Consequently, her sister was aware of the situation before I was, but I don't hold her silence against her. I haven't inquired whether she visited his grave. At this point, it doesn't seem particularly significant to me. In a way, I hold a similar perspective regarding whether she would still be involved with him if he was still alive. There's nothing she could say that would hold any real significance for me. On a brighter note, my daughters and I have already made some plans for the holidays. We always participate in the candlelight services at our church, which is a long-standing family tradition. I'm taking them to Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, Virginia, for their Christmas Town event, which features incredible lights. We also enjoy visiting Colonial Williamsburg during the holidays, so I've booked rooms for us at the Williamsburg Inn. They have a variety of family-oriented Christmas-themed events. I may have gone a little overboard with their Christmas gifts, but I want them to create plenty of wonderful memories this year. I'm currently in the process of composing an email to my wayward wife containing a set of questions, many of which were developed in collaboration with my therapist. I'll keep you informed about the essence of her responses. This week, my wayward wife has been taking care of our animals while I'm at work, which has been a significant relief for me. Additionally, it appears that she's been tidying up the house while I'm away. I suppose that's a positive development. It's one or two less tasks for me to worry about. Before I head to work for a while, I'd like to address a few questions. Regarding your query about whether I believe she would still be with him if he hadn't passed away, I'm inclined to think that asking her that question would be an exercise in futility. Any response would be based purely on conjecture and would lack any real significance. When it comes to evaluating her current dedication to me and our family, it's almost self-evident that it's stronger than during her affair. This is primarily because she couldn't have been any less committed to our relationship at that time, unless she was plotting something extreme. The crucial question revolves around the depth of her commitment at present. I won't even contemplate reconciliation unless she repeatedly demonstrates that she's unequivocally all in. We are navigating 1 full year of state-mandated separation, and I've now come to consider myself the prize in this equation. Imagining the extent of the effort she'll need to invest to convince me that she's someone I want to share my time with is a significant challenge. If that doesn't necessitate commitment, I'm not sure what does. I'm heading to work now. As always, I appreciate the prompt responses. Regarding his confrontation post, she went to therapy weekly for another 2.5 years. Her counselor apparently forced her to do exercises, imagining how she would feel if she found out I had done all of the things she had. Made her visualize me physically doing those things, made her write down everything that happened through the affair. That is what was in the envelope. I guess that her counselor suggested that instead of telling me, though, that she works on our marriage and become the wife and mother she should have been during the years she stole from us. Bear the burden herself, are the words she used. I expect she reviewed it occasionally to stay on track with her therapy, and likely a little stroll back memory lane as well. You're absolutely right. On D-Day, she mentioned that her individual counselor advised her to maintain the journal timeline as a means to remind herself of her regrettable decision-making and to aid her in staying the course of self-improvement. I haven't actually gone through that envelope yet. I placed it in the safe the following morning, and it's still there. To be fair, I've already seen and read a lot about the affair through the emails and photos I stumbled upon. I had a rather peculiar experience at church today. I assume that news of our separation has spread, which is unsurprising given the size of our community. 2 separate parishioners approached me and asked how they could be of assistance. Both offered to bring food or simply have a conversation. While I've known these women for many years, they are both much closer to wayward wife than to me. So their offers felt unexpected and frankly made me uncomfortable. Both are divorced and are roughly my age or slightly younger. It seems like they should be more inclined to support my wayward wife rather than me. In response, I simply expressed my gratitude for their offers and told them I would keep their kindness in mind. On a more ordinary note, the interior decorator will be completing the demolition work in the house this week. I'm not certain if I mentioned it earlier, but I hired a local company to switch the master and guest rooms in our house. They essentially stripped the old master room down to the studs, removing everything, including the furniture. I wanted to erase any trace of what I saw in my wayward wife's intimate photos. There's a considerable amount of work required to make these changes, such as enlarging the guest bathroom to master size, among other adjustments. Consequently, I'm currently sleeping in the basement. It might be a bit chilly, but I'm content just knowing that I won't have to set foot in that old master bedroom again. I also managed to find some time for a bit more Christmas decorating. Our daughters have always cherished our outdoor lights, so I dedicated a few hours to stringing LEDs. I've discovered that staying occupied is essential for maintaining my sanity. I've also been attempting to complete my individual counseling homework. It's proving to be quite challenging because I have no frame of reference for what being divorced feels like. I've been in a committed relationship for so long that it's akin to trying to recall what it felt like to be a 5-year-old. I experimented with taking off my wedding band, but it felt incredibly strange, so I ended up putting it back on. Today, I decided not to wear my ring to work. I didn't believe anyone would notice, but unsurprisingly, they did. They all tried to be discreet with their inquiries, so I opted to play coy. Right now, I don't think I owe anyone an explanation. I've been making an effort to draft a list of questions to send to my wayward wife, but I've hit a bit of a roadblock. I'm uncertain about what she could say at this point that would truly make a difference. Anything she might offer about her thoughts and emotions during the affair seems meaningless and ultimately irrelevant. Anything she says about her current feelings would likely be tainted by panic and desperation. It feels like a futile exercise. Well, my day turned out to be somewhat eventful. I left work today to retrieve some old schematics, the kind that used to be on paper back in the day. I recollect going inside and making my way towards my office, and then it's all a blank. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the hospital. Apparently, I either passed out or had a seizure. Wayward wife had come to the house to care for the animals and found me lying on the floor in the hallway. I'd split my forehead open, and there was blood everywhere. She called 911, and off I went to the emergency room. They conducted a battery of tests on me, which thankfully revealed no broken bones or internal bleeding. However, my electrolyte levels were seriously imbalanced, like really out of whack. They hooked me up to several IV fluids, and eventually I regained consciousness. Today, I discovered that consuming only 1 or 2 protein bars daily for several weeks isn't as beneficial for your health as I thought. While I did notice a significant weight loss recently, I wasn't overly concerned because I felt the need to shed a few pounds. However, it turns out I should have been worried. My doctor informed me that I was essentially malnourished. On the bright side, he did commend me for maintaining proper hydration. Small victories. They're keeping me in the hospital overnight for monitoring and an MRI. It might seem excessive, but if I don't want to stay, I'd have to sign out against medical advice, and I'm not that irrational. It appears that my wayward wife has experienced some kind of breakdown. She has been by my side continuously since she discovered me, even insisting on riding in the ambulance. I'm somewhat surprised they allowed it. I'm grateful for everyone's warm thoughts and words. I'll be heading home in a few hours, currently waiting for the anesthesiologist to provide the final interpretation of my MRI. I'm feeling considerably better this morning after receiving a substantial amount of IV fluids. I also had a consultation with the hospital nutritionist who empathized with my situation. She offered several recommendations for making nutritious smoothies that seem easy to prepare. I ultimately reached out to my sister-in-law to come and look after my wayward wife. Even when my sister-in-law took her back home, wayward wife hadn't stopped crying. I expressed my gratitude for her assistance in getting me to the hospital yesterday, but reiterated the importance of maintaining our separation. She seemed to grasp my perspective, although she wasn't very coherent. I'm not one to readily display vulnerability or depend on others for assistance, and this incident compelled me to do both. I suppose I'll return home and attempt to soothe my concerns by indulging in a tofu strawberry banana smoothie. Wish me luck. She's seated across the room from my bed, crying constantly and blaming herself. I'm uncertain about what to say to her. This is only the third time I've seen her since D-Day. However, I do need to express my gratitude for discovering me and taking me to the hospital. I'm not sure how long I might have been lying there otherwise. This means I missed my second individual counseling appointment today. I sent a message to my therapist to explain the situation, and we've rescheduled for next week. I want to extend my appreciation to everyone for suggesting questions for wayward wife. If she doesn't leave tonight, I might consider asking her a few of them. By the way, I never saw Midnight's per edit post, so no harm done. When I arrived home, I prepared a smoothie. To my surprise, the tofu was rather tasteless. Adding peanut butter significantly improved the flavor, so thanks for that suggestion, Antlered. Even though I still don't have much of an appetite, I've learned my lesson and will make an effort to consume these despite my reservations. I decided to stay home from work today and get some much-needed rest, although I felt a bit guilty about it. However, I did promise the doctor that I would rest. My sister-in-law called and mentioned that wayward wife was still inconsolable. I suggested that she attempt to schedule a visit with her individual counselor today. I wonder if wayward's wife can experience nervous breakdowns like this. I don't recall reading about such occurrences in any other discussions. Observing my wayward wife last night stirred the most peculiar mix of emotions I've ever encountered. My natural inclination upon witnessing her in such distress would typically be to provide comfort, perhaps with a hug, and so on. However, now a significant part of my mind almost seems to resist recognizing her. It's challenging to convey. I undoubtedly know who she is, but it's as though I perceive her in a different light now. It's not that I didn't care about her being upset, but it felt as if I were observing a stranger or distant acquaintance. I felt rather detached, I suppose. I'm uncertain about the healthiness of this response. There were various discussions about the role of forgiveness in this process, but I don't lean towards being an especially forgiving person. Plus, I'm well aware that I won't forget. There's too much to contemplate tonight. I'm heading back to bed. That's your brain and emotions safeguarding you. While you haven't explicitly mentioned this in your previous posts, I can imagine that since D-Day, your mind has been diligently working to reconcile the woman you thought you knew and the life you experienced with the woman you've recently discovered. In many, if not most, threads from betrayed spouses, you often come across phrases like, "I don't know who this person is." So, you're grappling with the weight of two distinct yet equally true understandings of your wife that seem beyond comprehension. Pre-D-Day, the version of you that existed would unquestionably rush to his wife's side if he saw her in pain. However, post-D-Day feels like a different person altogether. You've detached as a coping mechanism to avoid the dissonance between these two contrasting views. In the short term, this detachment may be considered healthy, in the sense that it served as a way to navigate the conflicting perception of your wife. However, in the long term, it might not be beneficial to you. This is something worth discussing with your individual counselor. This emotional response is somewhat normal, within the context of what you're going through, and it can assist you in reconciling these seemingly opposing perspectives of your wife. There are specific psychological terms used by individual counselors that could help explain what you felt and why you felt it. For me, I've simplified it to the heart saying one thing and the mind saying another. Make sure to rest well and take breaks frequently. You've got that upcoming trip with your daughters, and you'll want to appear in good shape for them. Otherwise, they might just put you under house arrest. When you say, "I obviously know who she is," in reality, you actually don't, and perhaps never truly did. The mental image of the person you had constructed in your mind only loosely aligns with the person you are married to. It took me some time to come to this realization with my wife, and it wasn't until I stopped attempting to reconcile the two versions and started looking at my wife with fresh, unbiased eyes, as if she were a stranger. This approach helped me rebuild my perception of who she is in my mind and led to progress in comprehending the situation. So, I encourage you to try to know your wife and truly observe her. Disregard what you thought you knew, as much of it may have been flawed. Look at her with fresh, open eyes. One of the lessons to take away from this tumultuous situation is that we inhabit a world where we know so much that isn't truly grounded in solid facts, but rather our beliefs influenced by various factors, including our desires to believe them. Your wife, children, parents, politicians, the mail carrier, the toll collector or tool collector at the bridge, they all have intricate inner lives that often do not align with our preconceived notions of them. It's akin to the red pill, blue pill concept from The Matrix when I realized this. It has transformed the way I perceive everything and has led me to question a vast expanse of previously unquestioned assumptions about the world and myself. This is the gift you've received, should you choose to make something meaningful out of it. Take, for instance, her affair. It must be the absolute turning point in her life. The most profoundly influential event that not only led to her regrettable behavior, but paradoxically, likely shaped her positive actions afterward. It's the pivotal factor that defines who she is now, and you were unaware. Frequently, you come across statements here like, "I don't understand how they could do it," with an unspoken emphasis on how could they do it. They could do it because that's a part of who they are. The real emphasis should be on the "I don't understand," because that's where the misconception lies. You didn't genuinely know them. So, consider knowing what you know and observe things as if you were seeing them for the first time, sending you strength. There were several discussions about the role of forgiveness in this process. I personally don't naturally lean towards being a very forgiving person, and I'm fully aware that I won't easily forget. This might be because you tend to think like an engineer. Engineers are compelled to grapple with concrete facts and meticulously weigh the consequences of their actions. If they don't, the bridges they construct could crumble. On the other hand, some individuals can allow their emotions to exert more influence. In a university setting, you'll often find that the faculty teaching in the College of Engineering tends to be more conservative than those teaching in liberal arts. The stakes are significantly higher when misinterpreting a poem doesn't have life or death implications. If you were to engage in an affair, you'd be brutally honest with yourself about the facts and consequences. If you proceeded, you would have a precise understanding of your actions. That's precisely why you're grappling with forgiveness and the inability to forget. You presume that your wife thinks along the same lines as you, and went ahead with her actions, fully aware of what she was doing. I'm not making excuses for your wife. I'm simply highlighting that there's nothing amiss with your reluctance to be overly forgiving. You are absolutely right. Attempting to reconcile wayward wife's two lives has been a persistent source of concern for me from the very beginning. I found your previous post quite intriguing. You raised a valid point about how engineers tend to approach things in a particular manner. I'm unsure if it's because we are trained to think that way as engineers, or if we were drawn to engineering due to our pre-existing thought processes. Regardless, I tend to approach life as a puzzle to be solved through meticulous analysis of facts. While assumptions may arise along the way, I prefer to believe that they are confined to those that can be substantiated through logical and evidence-based arguments. However, after reading some of the posts here, I've come to realize that I, too, am consistently making assumptions about the people around me on a daily basis. Since I can't access their thoughts, I genuinely have no clear insight into what they're thinking or how they're feeling. It might sound trivial, but that realization was somewhat eye-opening for me. I'm well aware of vast segments of my wayward wife's life that remain a mystery because much of it is concealed within her thoughts. Just as you mentioned, her affair was a significant part of her life for nearly a decade, and I remained entirely oblivious to it. During that period, the colleague in the office adjacent to mine at work was arguably less of a stranger than she was. This way of thinking leads me to ponder whether a committed, romantic, i.e., married relationship is genuinely suitable for me. The idea of knowing so little about the person you're meant to be closest to is rather unsettling. It somehow makes me feel vulnerable, akin to a character in a Cold War thriller. I'm comfortable with not understanding the inner workings of a business partner's mind. It's part of the challenge. However, I'm uncertain if I can handle a significant other who remains a complete enigma to me. I wonder if this entire process has eroded my capacity to be married to anyone, not just wayward wife. On a positive note, my daughters will be returning to town this weekend. Part 4. I'm delighted to hear the good news about your daughter. I hope you can create wonderful memories. Does she know about your health? No, my daughters are not aware of my accident. They are in the midst of their exams this week, and I don't want to distract them from their studies. It will become apparent when they return home and see the cut. Someone inquired about whether I have stitches, and I do, but they are quite small and mostly beneath the skin. If it does heal with a scar, I might end up resembling Harry Potter. First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude to everyone for their incredibly considerate responses. It's truly remarkable to contemplate the time and effort that people invest in crafting such insightful and uplifting posts. Thanks to the members of this forum, I feel far less isolated in this situation than I might otherwise. My daughters safely made it back home. On Friday, I spent some time cleaning the house, and I was surprised by how challenging it was to remove the blood from the hallway baseboards. It's truly wonderful having them around. It makes everything feel much more normal. They were both taken aback by the remodeling work, but seemed to approve. As far as I know, neither of them is aware of the distressing details of what my wayward wife did with the other man in the old master bedroom. I had to inform them about my recent fall, and unfortunately, it appeared to intensify their anger toward their mother. However, I'm starting to feel that their relationship with wayward wife is no longer my responsibility. Nevertheless, I welcome their concern and support, though I'm a little concerned they might restrict my movements and keep me housebound. I'm a bit pressed for time this morning as we're heading to church shortly. I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm reading your incredible posts, and I greatly appreciate them. Hello everyone. I've been enjoying a pleasant time with the girls, so I haven't been online much. Yes, I'm still having my shakes, although I still haven't developed a fondness for tofu. Initially, my daughters were insistent on taking care of me, but I eventually convinced them that I'm still fully functional. We've been strolling around our property, spending time with the animals, with the girls riding the horses. I've never trusted horses, so I'll stick to the tractor. Thank you. We've also been driving around town at night to admire the holiday decorations and lights, and we've enjoyed fires in the big fireplace every night. It's reminiscent of the Christmases from my childhood. I honestly haven't devoted much thought to wayward wife or her affair, and daughters haven't expressed any interest in discussing wayward wife either. We're leaving for Virginia on Thursday, and I'll make an effort to check in once or twice over the next week to keep you updated. I had my second individual counseling appointment today. While there haven't been any major breakthroughs, it was still a valuable session. I truly appreciate all the positive thoughts and support. Why the rush? Should he forgive a month after this happened? By the way, you can forgive and still choose to end the relationship. I see A1's interactions with his wayward spouse as nothing but peaceful. I don't think it's necessarily stoicism, but more about avoidance. I'm doing my best not to dwell on my wayward wife and the affair. I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't let her actions from over 9 years ago disrupt my time with my daughters. It's obviously not a long-term solution, but it's definitely worth it for now. That song always brought a tinge of sadness to me. It undeniably makes you reflect on your relationship with your children. It's hard not to listen to it and immediately want to embrace your kids. It feels like they were so tiny just yesterday. Merry Christmas, everyone. Just a quick update. My daughters and I had a fantastic trip. We got back home on Friday, fortunately avoiding some rain in Williamsburg, so good timing. While we were away, wayward wife dropped off presents for the girls and stocked the refrigerator with food for Christmas dinner. My daughters and I found this gesture somewhat unsettling. This led to a lengthy discussion about the entire situation. It was the first time WW had been mentioned to any extent since they arrived. My daughters are feeling profoundly betrayed by my wayward wife, and their anger shows no sign of waning. Wayward wife left me an extensive letter in which she expressed profound remorse. In this letter, she created several lists. One outlines what she perceives as the reasons for the affair, such as rebellion, selfish desire for pleasure, and fear of the responsibility of raising kids. Another list itemizes why I am not considered her Plan B, referred to as the backup plan. A related list catalogues all the positive aspects of our marriage since the affair ended. Perhaps the most intriguing list, which she titled her Empathy List, describes the emotions she imagined she would experience if I were to cheat on her. She appears to have a good grasp of the correct words to use, but it doesn't necessarily mean she truly comprehends the depth of betrayal involved. I don't believe the letter had the intended effect she was hoping for. If anything, I find myself angrier now than I have been since D-Day. Reading all those words only intensified my resentment toward her and our sham of a marriage. The entire situation has felt like an enormous charade. I despise what she did with other men and how she has harmed our daughters. I can't envision a way to move past this. She's more than a stranger. She's a thief and a fraud. Fortunately, I read her letter after the girls went to bed, and I felt better after a good night's sleep. We still managed to have a pleasant Christmas morning. I hope all of you have a wonderful Christmas day. Thank you for listening. Hello once again to everyone. My daughters and I had a busy week taking down decorations, playing cards and board games, and having heart-to-heart conversations. My second daughter refused to eat the food that wayward wife had left, but my first daughter and I saw no reason to let it go to waste. Neither of us are particularly skilled cooks. I gently suggested to the girls that they might consider counseling to help them come to terms with their mother's actions. My first daughter was open to the idea, but my second daughter said that wayward wife's terrible choices and lousy morals were not her concern. I'm concerned that my second daughter might completely shut wayward wife out of her life. I inquired about your separation several pages ago. What was your objective in seeking separation? Was it the initial step to create some space to consider your choices? Was the separation agreement comprehensive, including a detailed plan for final financial separation? My primary goal was to distance myself from her. Being in her presence triggered too many unpleasant emotions, including nausea, sadness, humiliation, and most recently, anger. I needed to maintain my functionality as a human being, and I believed that living with her would make that impossible. I started considering my options shortly after discovering the computer evidence, even before confronting her, and I haven't stopped weighing them. Yes, the separation agreement is comprehensive and covers a detailed separation of property and finances. I plan to have my lawyer and CPA execute the agreement in the new year. Untangling assets and reallocating property is a lengthy, paperwork-intensive process that I didn't want to initiate right before the holidays with my daughters on their way home. In my state, the separation agreement typically serves as the divorce settlement if the couple decides to divorce at the end of the one-year separation period. I agree with many people who suggest that wayward wife has put in a great deal of effort to improve herself and that she may be partially remorseful. I don't believe she will ever cheat on anyone again, and she might be an excellent candidate for reconciliation. However, I'm not sure if those factors really matter to me. The pain and humiliation will always linger. I've been reading some threads in the reconciliation forum that aren't very encouraging. Some betrayed spouses who are 5, 10, and even 20 years out still think about the betrayal daily, and many of them seem very unhappy. Strangely, the discussions in the divorce forum appear more positive. Sadly, I still love her as much as ever. She was my first in everything, a significant part of my life for what feels like an eternity, the most beautiful woman I've ever met, the only person I've ever had a physical relationship with, and the mother of my 2 wonderful daughters. The last 6 or 7 years with her have been the best of my life. We've shared countless important moments together and had exciting plans for the future. Despite all of this, I don't think any of those factors will be enough for me to forgive her. My stubborn male ego may prevent me from moving beyond this. I've come across advice in multiple threads cautioning against making major decisions in the first 3 to 6 months, so I'll refrain from doing so. Hello, I found your story relatable because of certain similarities. I managed to expose the other person involved, POSOM, which provided a sense of satisfaction at the time, but ultimately it feels like an empty victory. My wife and I are headed for divorce. She strongly opposes the idea, as do my children. However, I cannot continue being married to her after what she has done. Like you, I'm grappling with a wife who behaved one way with me and an entirely different way with her lover, more adventurous, animated, and active. She engaged in activities with him that I had asked about and was met with rejection and even shame. I also stumbled upon a video secretly recorded by POSOM. It's incredibly painful. I still love her more than anything, though. So we came up with an unusual solution. We're getting a divorce but continuing to date as a couple. It might seem odd, but it appears to be working for us. I'm keeping the house and buying her out. We've divided our assets, but because we're still technically together, it's as if we both have access to everything. In my state, the separation agreement essentially serves as the divorce settlement, and her Catholic guilt has made her quite remorseful and generous. Our younger kids will remain with me, while she's rented an apartment nearby. They see each other often. When she stays over at my place, she brings a bag with her essentials and takes everything when she leaves. I follow the same rules. Friends often ask if I'm crazy. Maybe, but this arrangement is working. The kids are as content as can be under the circumstances. My wayward wife holds on to hope for a true reconciliation, but is also fine with the current situation, she says. My reasoning is that it's better to stick with the familiar devil than venture into the unknown. Besides, I have no interest in other women, even though the weight loss from the infidelity ordeal seems to have made me more attractive, or so I've been told by some very kind ladies. The thought of her being with other men is unbearable, even though I won't tell her that. She claims she wants only me. Where have I heard that before? We've agreed that if this arrangement stops working for either of us, we'll communicate before pursuing other relationships. In the meantime, I don't risk losing more of my assets, and I essentially get to retain what I already have. I'm sorry to hear that you're going through a tough time as well. It seems like you've got a good grip on your situation, and I respect your approach. While the logic of the solution you suggested makes sense, I'm not interested in dating my wife or anyone else. My ability to trust a romantic partner has been severely eroded, and I'm determined not to repeat this experience. I'm fully aware that there's no foolproof way to ensure that my wife or any other woman won't cheat on me in the future. I've reflected on this extensively since my daughters returned to school. I've always been quite independent and not afraid of being alone in the sense of being unattached in a relationship. I understand that no one can predict the future with certainty, and as they say, only a Sith deals in absolutes. However, the thought of a life without the risk of experiencing this kind of betrayal is strangely comforting. Since coming to this realization, my mind has found peace, and I believe it's the right choice for me. This newfound motivation is driving me to get back to work and navigate through the complexities of the formal division of property. The sooner all the legal requirements are met and finalized, the sooner I can move forward with my life. For those who are interested, I finally read through the documents my wayward wife left me on D-Day. It was a painful read, but to her credit, she provided excruciating detail about the 9 years they were together. This included a highly detailed timeline that matched everything she told me the night I confronted her. She also included an apology letter. While none of this information was truly new, I did discover that she routinely bought the same Christmas and birthday presents for her affair partner and me. Evidently, he would request certain gifts, and she would purchase the same things for me. This revelation sheds light on some puzzling presents I received during that time period. I genuinely believe she has done nearly everything right since his passing. I understand that most of you might think she should have told me right away. However, I believe my reaction to her affair would have been the same, regardless of when I learned about it. To be honest, I wish she had been more successful in hiding her actions. I think I would have preferred to remain in the dark about her infidelity. I understand this might be an unpopular opinion here, but it doesn't really matter at this point. I have another individual counseling appointment scheduled for tomorrow. I'm curious to hear what my therapist will have to say about my decision. Wishing everyone a happy new year. May we all witness positive changes in 2018. I'd like to add that I know many might say it's too early in this process for me to make long-term decisions, especially when I recently mentioned I would wait 3 to 6 months. However, I don't think I can find peace if there's a chance of experiencing betrayal again. I doubt I could enter a new relationship with a clean slate, as I would constantly second-guess my partner's feelings and actions. Her past actions would continue to haunt me and overshadow any positive experiences. The only way I see to reduce the risk of future betrayal to zero is to avoid romantic relationships altogether with my wayward wife and all women. Her letters do discuss her lack of remorse during the affair. She had no guilt because she believed she deserved to be happy and get the most out of life. However, she began to feel guilty and remorseful during her individual counseling. Hello, everyone. It's been a busy week. I've gotten back into the swing of things at work, with plenty of new and ongoing projects to keep me entertained. My therapist seemed a little surprised at my determination to proceed with a divorce. She inquired if it was a well-reasoned decision. I explained my perspective, and she seemed pleased that I wasn't making a hasty decision. She echoed several things that members have said in my thread. She, like most on this site, agrees that my wayward wife has made significant progress in self-improvement and will likely become a catch for some other fortunate man. It's somewhat disappointing that I had to be the beta test for her new and improved self. I just don't believe I'll ever be able to look at her the same way I did 6 months ago. Perhaps that could change over the long haul, but I doubt she'd be willing to wait the necessary years, or even decades, for me to possibly return to a mental state where I can accept her as my wife. That seems beyond anyone's tolerance, no matter how well-intentioned. It's best to cut the cord and let both of us move on. My individual counselor mentioned that she wanted to discuss this point further next week, though. She has assigned me the task of composing a letter acknowledging the positive aspects of our relationship. She's concerned that I might dismiss the entire marriage as a waste of time or a mistake. I've maintained my diet and have actually put on 5 pounds. It's less impressive when you realize that I had lost 25 pounds after D-Day, but it's a step in the right direction. I haven't had any communication with my wayward wife in the new year. I'm waiting until all the formalities of the property separation are complete. My lawyer estimates another month to completely untangle our finances. I'll speak to her when I drop off the check and associated titles on deeds representing her portion of the settlement. She agreed to a lump sum distribution. Not sure if that's the right word, as it makes the marriage sound like a business paying dividends, with no alimony. I have regular Skype sessions with my daughters every couple of days, and I find it very therapeutic. They both seem concerned about me after my hospital stay, so I believe they appreciate seeing me alive and kicking. The renovation is progressing slowly. Work stopped over the holidays, but will resume next week. While the girls were at home, they had several good ideas, so I'm planning to incorporate those into the build. Hello again, everyone. I apologize for not posting in a while. Life has a tendency to become more complicated just when you think things are calming down. In January, my primary business won 3 large contracts. Normally, that would be cause for celebration. However, a significant portion of my employees have been out sick with the flu for much of the past 2 to 3 weeks, leaving us with a skeleton crew just barely holding things together. Everyone has been working long hours, making them susceptible to illness as well, resulting in a revolving door of employees returning from sick leave as others go out. To top it off, I came down with influenza near the end of January. I tried to power through it, but that only made things worse, so my secretary threatened to flog me if I didn't stay away from the office. This flu season has been absolutely dreadful. By the way, I'm planning to organize a flu vaccine clinic at our offices next fall. Last week, my wayward wife, the lawyers, and I had a meeting to finalize the separation of our property. During the meeting, she remained incredibly quiet. She signed all the necessary papers and accepted her check, but wouldn't even look at me. It was clear that she felt miserable about the entire process. I noticed her distress and, during a break when the lawyers were discussing something else, I asked her how she was holding up. She admitted to feeling down and said she missed being with me. For her, signing the paperwork made the idea of divorce all too real. Knowing wayward wife for over half my life, something about her reaction troubled me. I inquired if she was still attending individual counseling as I was. She confirmed that she was, but indicated that we didn't have more time to talk. 2 days later, her sister informed me that she had attempted to take her own life and was on her way to the hospital. I rushed to the ER because all of her insurance is still connected to me. They managed to resuscitate her, and by the time I was allowed to visit her, she was very weak but alert. I won't hide the fact that seeing her in that condition was one of the most emotionally challenging experiences I've ever faced. Despite our recent troubled history, I still have deep feelings for her. Learning how close my best friend of so many years came to ending her own life was a profound shock. I remain committed to the path of separation and divorce, but this recent event truly rattled me. She doesn't want our daughters to know about it, so I've kept her secret. She's now back at her sister's place, under the care of a psychiatrist, which brings some relief. I'm currently grappling with this latest crisis. It's clear to me that I need to refocus on my individual counseling. Additionally, I hope to be more active on this forum and post more frequently. I'm still deeply concerned about her after our conversation. Many of you have suggested that she might attempt suicide again, and I share that concern. I've discussed this with her sister, who also worries about her well-being. Unfortunately, her parents are no longer alive, so there is no familial support to turn to. I mentioned to her that the girls need to know about what happened, but she is concerned about upsetting them. I argued that point and offered to help her think about how to explain things to them. I hope our daughters will eventually show some understanding and provide her with the much-needed support. I've seen several members advise against introducing wayward spouses to this site for various excellent reasons. However, I believe my wayward wife needs support to understand that she is not alone and that things can, in time, improve for many people in our situation. I introduced her to SI and recommended that she explore the wayward side and the separation forum. I told her to avoid my specific thread, since I believe that many of the comments in these 50 pages could hurt her more than they would help. Regarding the length of this thread, I received a PM informing me that threads are not supposed to exceed 50 pages. The member suggested that I start a new thread, but I'm uncertain if that's the best course of action. This thread seems to have developed its own life, and I don't want to divert attention from new posters in this forum who are at the early stages of their painful journey. Perhaps it would be more appropriate for me to continue in the separation divorce forum. I want to express my gratitude to all of you who have provided support throughout this process. Without your collective assistance, I'm certain that my experience would have been even more challenging. I did contemplate placing this second thread in the Divorce Separation Forum, but eventually decided to keep it here in this forum for the sake of continuity. I extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone who took the time to read through the first thread and offer their insights. It's been 50 pages filled with considerate, passionate responses aimed at helping me through the most difficult period of my life. This incredible community has been a lifeline. Wayward Wife has had 2 recent hospitalizations for psychiatric observation within the past week. Her condition has somewhat stabilized due to new medications, and there's a slight improvement. Her recent mental breakdown has been almost as distressing as D-Day. Maintaining no contact has taken a back seat as her sister and I have been focused on providing her with care. Interestingly, she hasn't made many attempts to communicate with me. This might be for the best, as I'm unsure of what to say to her. She has finally agreed to share her suicide attempt with my daughters. I reached out to the girls since they had apparently blocked Wayward Wife's number. My first daughter expressed immediate concern, but my second daughter, well, she's a tougher one to reach. She has always been the more stubborn of the two. While she did express her apologies, she still wasn't ready to talk to her mother. In any case, my first daughter visited this past weekend. I wouldn't describe the relationship between Wayward Wife and my first daughter as completely back to normal, but the visit did seem to have a positive impact on Wayward Wife. At this point, we find ourselves in a somewhat uncertain waiting game. The division of property has been officially settled since she signed the paperwork 2 weeks ago, although it feels like a considerable amount of time has passed since then. Currently, my primary focus is on helping her get back on her feet. The psychiatrist holds hope that her recent struggles were a temporary setback. one that can be overcome with the right therapy. I apologize for the extended silence in my updates. Unfortunately, this won't be a cheerful update. My wife managed to take her own life on my birthday, which fell in early March. Life has been nothing but turmoil since that tragic event. Both of my daughters decided to take a leave of absence from school, and they are now back home with me. None of us are managing this situation well. It's truly challenging to fathom that less than a year ago, life appeared so joyful and idyllic. I yearn for the chance to return to that state of blissful unawareness. I want to express my deep gratitude to all the members of the forum for their unending support over the past 6 months or so. Many of you generously devoted your time to provide invaluable guidance, constructive insights, and even simple internet hugs. I sincerely wish each of you the best of luck in all